It's, they're
What hospital is she in? Monroe?
Shut that if
She's already had it out.
Hey guys, we're live right now, but we're going to be starting in just about a minute.
They told her she won't go home till Tuesday or Wednesday.
Is that framed in okay? Can you look and see when we're all sitting there? No?
It's
I
fine.
think it's
I think
okay.
it's great. Do you guys know Main Street?
Just throw it from the
I'm
sideline.
gonna throw it from the Tuesday.
We got a minute left.
Phones.
Yeah, I shut mine off. Hold on. What is that?
We got a minute left.
Brett's very good.
Brent is like the Brad Schreiber of the TV show. You don't have one unless you have him.
Right. Oh, did Brad help you on that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We're not doing it now because of
Things.
you know, just
Reasons.
John put more time in it to help
Yeah.
with the
30 seconds.
okay.
Yeah, there's definitely some changes going on there. This, I knocked that off of something. Don't know what I did it on.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
You probably broke something, man.
15 seconds.
That's okay. We'll bill you.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
10 seconds. 5, 4. You got an 8-second bed, just so you know. I'll key you in.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Business and More. I'm your host Greg Moore. We have a very special guest for you today. It's going to be lots of fun throughout the hour. We're going to be talking business, Monroe County, economic development, entrepreneurship, Generation E, excellence in business, all kinds of things that start with the letter E. How about that? We'll just keep it themed today. I have in studio today Tracy Oberleiter. Did I say that right, Tracy?
You said that right, yes.
Close. I mean, it doesn't get more Dutch than that, does it?
German.
German. Well, it's close.
Yeah.
I'm Dutch and German, so sometimes I get them confused. But Tracy's here in studio. He's just a great guy, so involved in the community, especially from the business aspect. Tracy, why don't you give a little introduction of yourself, what you do, some of the boards you sit on, and then we'll take it from there.
All right, thanks, Greg. First and foremost, thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely.
Appreciate the opportunity to share all that I know about economic development with the community. A little bit about myself. Been a Monroe Bank and Trust staff member for almost 49 and a half years now.
Oh, wow.
Okay, coming up on 50. And I'm a business development officer. Been in a lot of different areas of the bank throughout the years, but I found a sweet spot that I think I'm really good at, and the bank appreciates what I do, and that's business development / economic development relationship with the county.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
And you've been, you said, for 49 and a half years, so kind of economic development, banking, being in the business world is kind of all you've ever known.
Yeah, and it's a good fit. Now,
Yeah.
admittedly, 49 and a half years ago, I had no idea what economic development meant. Right?
Sure.
But as you advance in your career, you get to understand that's the heartbeat of the community. So,
Okay, tell us a few things, maybe some of the boards or some of the organizations that you're involved with as well, and then we'll dive a little deeper into them as we go on.
all right, as part of an officer of the bank, there's strong support to make sure that you give back to the community.
Mhm.
And they don't particularly direct you on what organizations that you must serve on. You find something of interest, and then you go from there. The bank lends a lot of support. Besides economic development, and that's at times probably half of what my day is all about, and sometimes the full day. So the bank's got a pretty big investment in my time in economic development. I served as the chairman for the EDC board for the last 10 years.
Okay.
We'll get back to more about that, but on top and inside of that, and besides that, I should say, I'm also an executive officer of the Monroe Chapter Ducks Unlimited.
Okay.
Right. Advanced from there, became the state treasurer for the Michigan Ducks Unlimited,
Okay.
and I'm chairman-elect in 2 years to run the state on the volunteer side for Ducks Unlimited. That's the Ducks Unlimited component.
Okay.
And bank completely supports Ducks Unlimited as a corporation, and also my time involved in helping promote that. Also, I'm the treasurer for the Miss Monroe County Scholarship Program.
Oh,
That's
cool.
No new name for our county. We've been doing that for oh my gosh, I think 57 years now we're coming up on.
Sure.
Got a Miss America that came out of our community, Kaylani,
Kaylani,
right?
absolutely.
That's no new news to anybody. Several Miss Michigans, and I've been involved with that organization, I'm guessing maybe 30 years. Treasurer for, I don't know, you lose count. Maybe the last 25 years.
Sure. You just, at some point, you just go by presidents, right? Well, I think that was 5 or 6 presidents ago. We don't count years anymore,
That's
right?
exactly right. Yeah.
So let's get back a little bit to the Monroe County Economic Development Corporation. That's a board that I sit on with. That's where we see the most interaction together. And it's really a cool idea. You said it's been in effect for 10 years. Tell me a little bit about what that board does, maybe how it came about, and what you see in the future for it.
Sure, Greg. My involvement has been in the last 10 years. The actual Economic Development Corporation came out, I'm guessing maybe 35 years ago,
Okay.
and its initial motive was to be a funding mechanism for large companies like DTE Energy, and doesn't have to be that large. A local bank took advantage of it, but they created revenue bonds, and it's just a fancy way of allowing companies to borrow money for projects in our community at a cheaper net cost interest rate to the firm.
Okay.
And the county saw the value in that, and they, County Board of Directors, Commissioners, I should say, saw the value in that, and they created the EDC board. And its total function was just to authorize those bonds, stay in existence, because legally you have to until the bonds are paid for, right? And put a board together, have a treasurer, secretary, and it's a full-fledged board. But quite honestly, they didn't have to meet but once a quarter to kind of just review the status of the bonds and that sort of thing. There wasn't a lot of activity going on.
Sure.
There was a few bonds issued, and over time, and I have to give Dale Zorn, credit for this, because at that time he served on the Monroe County Board of Commissioners. I think at one time he was even chairman. He wanted it to go in a little bit different direction. He says, you got a lot of talent on that board. Do something with the minds that you have on that board. Just don't sit there and look over these revenue bonds. Create opportunities and processes to advance economic development. Pretty big challenge, never done before. So about that time, Doug Chafin was serving on the board, and he got busy with some other activities, asked me to serve on it. So it wasn't too long after that I became chairman and took that initiative seriously, recruited other community leaders to be on that board so that we had a representation from all kinds of business, the hospital, healthcare, and utilities and that sort of thing. And we were off on a mission. And from there, as activities occurred, we even needed to form subcommittees because the job got too big for the board.
Sure.
Right? And today we have the main board, which you serve on as a representative of the Monroe County Board of Commissioners. And there's 2 other committees, a Streamlined committee and an Entrepreneurship committee, because it was just too busy for the board to keep track of everything going on. So we've got, across all 3 boards, we've got, I think, 35 professional people, all volunteers, I might add.
Yeah, and I want to touch on that a little bit because what you described as the beginning of the EDC, I've only been involved in the EDC for 2 years now, is completely foreign to what I know what it does now. I mean, when we go to those meetings, there's a wide range of different professions and vocations and things represented there. And we even have people come in maybe from, like I said, different professions or careers. And, I've always felt that consensus style management, whether it be in a business or whether it be in government or even within in family, it seems if you get input from a lot of different people, you kind of get a wider range of wise counsel. And I feel like that's why I'm so attracted to the EDC and what you guys are doing there, because instead of maybe being 1 or 2 people in white collar banking or in unions or something like that, we have just such a wide range of different people, different walks of life, different careers that then come together and go, okay, how can we make Monroe County kind of the best place to live, play, work, and all those things. So talk a little bit about the process of going through and maybe trying to find those different types of people to represent and what the importance of that is.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because the perfect example, and this actually happened within our organization. This goes back about 8 years ago. Barry Bushman with the Manick and Smith Group, part of our board. And there's no off limits on suggestions. It's a safe committee to be in because whatever your idea is, we're going to flesh it out. And if it's got some value, we'll run with it. Not every suggestion makes it to the finish line. But in this case, Barry came from a different community that had a streamlining process, not exactly what it looks like today with us, but he said, you know what, board, and this was back in the era of the Great Recession, right?
Okay.
This goes back 8-9 years ago. Not much is going on in the county.
Sure.
Barry says, you know, there will be a day that this county comes back and the economy comes back, and we better be ready for development. So he says, let's create a streamlining process by which we can make it as simple as possible, hand it out to a developer or make it easily and accessible online, and has all the format in it of who to go, what to see, the zoning laws, the different township makes up, the road system, the rail system,
Sure.
the utilities available in the different communities. It is inclusive of everything. So 8 years ago we started that.
Okay.
It took a couple of years, took about 1,000 hours of special volunteer hours, to create that package. And today it's alive and doing well, and we hang our hat on that.
Sure.
And it's our go-to book. It's our go-to process. And the Monroe County Business Development Corporation, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes, kind of maintains that. We have an ongoing committee, the Streamlining Committee, that oversees it and makes sure that updates are made and that sort of thing. So
Sure.
it makes Monroe County a business-friendly community.
Well, you know, and which I like too as a real estate broker. I love anytime you can streamline that, and I have a new business or maybe someone who wants to purchase either commercial land or something like that come to me and go, you know, I'm new to Monroe County, what do I do? And I go, oh, we have this whole process in place where I can connect you with all the correct people, local governments, municipalities, things like that. And that's a really attractive thing to business owners and entrepreneurs. And, you know, sometimes maybe the thing we could work a little harder at is maybe just making that public and you know, letting the public know that that's going on here in Monroe County. So often I hear so many residents go, you know, oh, they don't do this or they don't, you know, oh no, we've been working on that for quite a while. Just because you don't know about it doesn't mean it's not happening. But it's very encouraging to know that we have, like you said, volunteers. I mean, these are people who have professions, have jobs, own businesses, and they volunteer their time to try to make Monroe County a better place, both economically, you know, and for professional workers, things like that.
Yeah. And you talk about busy people, absolutely, every one of them.
Yeah.
But you know what? They find such an interest in participating, they make it a priority.
Yeah.
So I'm sure what happens when I call a meeting or when something needs to get done with the EDC side of it, something else doesn't happen at
Sure.
their end until later on. And that's good. We can swing to action pretty quickly, put programs together. And, you know, we have our own little network within ourselves that we pass business on back and forth. Right?
Sure.
I mean, I don't say that's the reason they do it, but networking certainly is a part of everything
Oh,
we
no,
do.
absolutely.
Right,
Yeah.
Rick? I mean, it's the way business gets done, and a lot of good business gets done that way.
Sure. So in the next few minutes, could you give me maybe just an overview of where you see the EDC board going? Is it going to kind of stay on that same track and be an economic development tool? Do you see anything new coming for the future on that board for people watching or listening?
Well, I think the EDC board is very healthy, very active. I see maybe some of our members changing over time, increasing the membership to represent different lines of work, if you will.
Okay.
For instance, Greg, we just added Tim Jansen to represent the agricultural side of business in Monroe County.
Sure, big business in Monroe County.
Well, we never really had one. Not that we just didn't think that it was a big. We knew it was a big part of the economy. There's no question about that. But we just didn't think that someone would be willing to serve on that because they're always so busy with
Sure.
the farming aspect. And we thought that through, and we thought, you know what, it's time to get representation. And you know, I don't know if the folks know, but half our land mass is designated as agricultural.
Agricultural, sure.
Right? And
Yeah.
thousands of jobs, big part. And we found someone that gets it, that understands it. Goes to Lansing, represents the ag business
Sure.
in Lansing. So things like that's going to happen as industry changes in Monroe and takes a new direction. Sometimes we'll get representatives from that, maybe higher technology. We'll get people.
Sure.
So it's a constantly moving board.
Changing, evolving, make sure you're including things, new technologies, new industries. So it's a very dynamic board. It's not static in the sense of this is what's represented. It stays that way. If we need to change a little bit, we change. Is that
and,
safe to say?
A big focus right now, and it's every meeting I go to, and pretty much every meeting I have with a customer, commercial customer,
Sure.
the need for labor.
Yeah.
The need for labor.
And we're going to talk more about need for labor. That is a big need for a lot of businesses. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more with Tracy Oberleiter with Business and More. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off there. We just need to break at the 15. Yeah, let's touch on that a little bit. Maybe start with labor when we come back. Finish your thought there, and then if you want to move on to you said it was the BD.
Let's talk about the
We talked about Link.
15 seconds.
Well, we
okay.
didn't really.
Okay, yeah.
We
You
talk
want to start
about
with that then?
Whatever you want. I'm here.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Business and More. We have Tracy Oberleiter in studio. Great guest, great guy, and we're learning so much today about what's going on in Monroe County per economic development, entrepreneurship, things like that. So before the break, Tracy, you were talking about labor and maybe some of the issues and challenges that businesses are facing. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, I certainly can. Labor has always been top of mind in Monroe County, and especially with the Business Development Corporation, Tim Lake's group, that sort of thing. But we've really been feeling the pressure in the last, 4 or 5 years now.
Okay.
Just the labor market is very thin here in Monroe County. We've got a lot of talent, but we just don't have enough people to satisfy most of the jobs. In my travels, as I visit business customers, that's always seems to be top of mind.
Sure.
Just take a look when you're driving around in the community, all the hire now signs that are
Sure.
around. Yeah.
Yeah, help wanted, hire now, yeah.
Yeah. And part of what's going on is the talent need for the labor is much more technical nowadays.
Sure.
Can be in most cases, right? They're going to need some kind of extended educational piece to go along with their job requirements. And the Monroe County Community College is very busy at trying to satisfy those. They've got a team of people that actually coordinate with specific businesses to find out what they need as far as training to help them, hire the correct amount of people and with the right education. So there's a lot of activity going on with that.
Sure. I was in a BDC meeting, and we actually had an owner of a light manufacturing plant say it was because of the added effort that the Monroe County Community College has, or I should say the effort that they're putting towards post-secondary skills trades and things like that, he actually pulled 2 new employees out of their program to where he said, I wouldn't have had those most likely anywhere else. So the fact that we have economic development teams working with education, I really see those going hand in hand. You really can't have one without the other. When it comes to labor, if you need a certain skill set, well then we need to get those skill sets up to par for labor to then hire. So it's nice to see in a county too where you have post-secondary education working with economic development teams going, okay, if we need to put our focus on this part of the business sector for a little bit or for an extended period of time, we're willing to do that because that's what the market desires or market needs. Let's talk about the Link plan a little bit more though. I think you briefly mentioned that. Can you tell me what that is and kind of what that focuses on? What's the goal of the Monroe County Link Plan?
Okay, first and foremost, it's the biggest initiative I've seen come out of this community in the time that I've been involved with the EDC activities. And that goes back 10 years, and I'm sure it goes back a lot longer than that. It's a program that was designed basically, started out in the County Board of Commissioners gave us some funding to start
Okay.
this, right? We understood and thought that there would be an opportunity for economic expansion along the I-75 corridor with the new bridge to Canada,
Sure.
right? And that's now been approved. It's a lot of work going on, construction. I think it might be as early as a year and a half, and it might be open, right? Well, we started working on it early, and essentially it started with that. And we identified 6 different categories of expertise that we needed to focus on to make this Monroe County Link program sellable to the world, to bring investors in that would create job opportunities, build or not necessarily factories, but business establishments.
Sure.
And the I-75 corridor was the focus point on that. And there's 60 different professional people. And some of them are from the EDC boards and that sort of thing, but
Okay.
not everybody. So we reached out, Tim Lake and the Business Development Corporation, I think you serve on that board, do you not?
Sure.
I think you
Yep.
do, right? They reached out and recruited 60 people of think tank groups to put programs together. And I'm going to talk just a little bit about every group just so the public knows the kind of energy that's being put involved.
Please do.
With this. The first category, and these are chaired groups that we call them pillars,
Okay.
but there's a chairman for each one of these groups. And prepare for investment is the first one. I'll come back to that because I serve on that one. Enhance the local image and the brand of our county, right? Improve workforce development and education. We just touched on that, and
Sure.
that's still a need that we need to do more. Grow Monroe as a logistics gateway. Kind of a concept, since there'll be a lot of trucking and transportation efforts going on I-75 to get to the bridge.
Sure.
They have to go through Michigan. Most generally, they have to go I-75 if they're coming from downstate to get to the Canadian bridge. So,
Absolutely.
all right, and then improve the local quality of life and strengthen our tourism opportunities. We're going to take advantage of the expanding battlefield and what
Sure.
that means for our community.
A lot of history here in Monroe
And then
County.
we want to grow strategically. We want to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place and coordinated effort, that we're just not growing in one spot and not taking consideration another. So
Sure.
it's a big plan.
I've had some people from the county when I talk about this, and maybe they're not really involved in these type of boards or planning groups or things like that. They go, well, what's the importance there? Why do we care about 75 and the new bridge? And there was a federal study done, and I was reading it, and it said of 75%, 3 out of every 4 trucked good that comes into the United States comes in through the Ambassador Bridge. So just think about that. So 75% of all goods that come into the United States that come across in a truck come in at that bridge from outside the United States. That is a huge amount of goods and products coming through there, and it really is a bottleneck. That second bridge is not only going to open up more commerce, but trading between countries and obviously globally, since we live in a global economy now. To have that 75 corridor, okay, coming south of Detroit, and Monroe being so strategically planted right between Toledo and Detroit, I mean, the opportunities there are endless. I mean, that's why, heck, I was just in a meeting 2 or 3 days ago with a city councilman in Toledo that wants to put rail in from Toledo to Detroit and then put a stop in Monroe because he understands that corridor right there is so incredibly important. And Toledo's in a unique position to where they go, our closest metropolitan neighbor is Detroit. It's Cleveland's too far away, Cincinnati too far. So we want to connect with Detroit, Michigan, and honestly connect with Monroe as well, because we're kind of that stop in between. So the importance and the foresight that we have people in this county that are saying, okay, we have to make a strategic long-term plan. Sometimes in politics I can get a little jaded because everyone does everything in 1 and 2 year chunks. You don't really want to take on a plan that might last 8 or 10 years or far off into the future. Just from an elected official standpoint, you don't know if you'll be there or part of it. So to have people that go, you want to what? Let's put a long-term plan in place and involve a lot of people. I mean, that's a huge undertaking. There's everyone from business on the link plan I'm talking about, business owners, elected officials, township supervisors, people in positions of influence within their community. So to have all these people come together and go, okay, we need to make a plan, that really is something special. And it's things that I think sometimes, and rightly so, residents, constituents, people who live in Monroe County, they're not thinking about those things. They have families, they have jobs, they're, just make sure, if I need the police for a stray dog, or if I need, to go get milk at the store, it's open. Like, they have normal concerns that they shouldn't be concerned about with these kind of things. So to have people in the community that go, we need to tackle these really big issues that, might take a little more work, might be a little longer in the strategic planning aspect of it. I think that's a really good thing. And for business overall, like I said, if I'm talking to a new business or somebody who wants to expand in Monroe County, and I turn them on to these type of programs, they go, oh, okay, Monroe County has their head screwed on straight. We're not just here for, hey, we want you here for a couple years. We want you here for the long term, and we're making long-term plans to satisfy business.
Yeah, it's kind of like grow strategically, which I just mentioned before. And to support what you're indicating there, Greg, is this plan is a 5-year plan. Wasn't going to happen in a year or two. It's only been around now for a little over a year. So it's got 4 years, and it's probably, quite honestly, going to get legs on itself, and it's going to continue to grow, because we found that as we've identified, we'll talk about the 8 properties that we've identified along I-75 that are probably top of mind.
Okay.
But we've got the corridor of the US 23 corridor, right?
Yeah.
Which is also north and south, and just one block by Dundee, and we've got M50. So we've got truck routes that can be also enhance locations for businesses to locate. So it's
well, it's very unique here in Monroe County as well, too. I've lived here my whole life, but I visited 80 of the 83 counties in Michigan. And, we have 23, 275, 75, 24, 125, 75. I mean, we have all these corridors. Then we have a coastline community. We have an agriculture. I mean, we have a lot of stuff going on here in Monroe County. And a port. One of the largest ports, I might add. And boy, is Paul doing a great job down there, just rejuvenating that and figuring out ways he can use that for economic development, help the county of Monroe. Heck, I should have him in here one day talking about that, because that's just amazing what's going on down there. I grew up in Monroe, so that was an afterthought in the 80s and up to the 90s. It's just these last maybe 10 or so years that we really went, how do we utilize this awesome natural resource? And, and it's such an economic driver as well.
Well, Greg, I'm going to tell my age a little bit here, but I can remember when that was a dump. It was a dump. It was the dump for the city of Monroe.
Sure.
And I used to go down there, and there's just, it was a dump.
Yeah,
and
sure.
There wasn't anything pretty about it, and now look what it's turned into.
Yeah.
Big industries down there.
Yeah.
And
a lot of growth opportunity down there, I think, too.
A lot of growth, and there's a big company that's coming in. I can't really tell you too much about it,
Okay.
but they decided to land there because they needed the water. They needed to be able to get their product onto the water. So that's another asset that we have that makes, and they're right in that corridor. They're right in that I-75 corridor.
Sure.
And there's 8 different properties that we've identified that we thought would be first of mind for most developers.
Okay.
And these are
Can you talk a little bit about those?
I can. One that the public's been most familiar with is the old Consumers Power Whiting Plant site.
Sure.
The developer bought that,
Mm-hmm.
and that's right in the sweet spot of I-75. It's not too far from I-75. It's down Erie Road.
Yep.
3 or 4 miles, something like that. So we've identified that. And part of the group that I serve on is we're inventorying all the assets of each piece of property. What kind of utility services they have, what kind of road system they have there. If they don't have particular utilities like gas service, how much it's going to cost to get gas service there.
Sure.
If they need extra electrical power, how much is it going to cost, and the timelines and that sort of thing. And the zoning, to make sure the zonings are in order and all that sort of thing. So we kind of package it up so that a developer doesn't have to spend a lot of time doing that. And then by having the Monroe County Link program, it's a marketing tool.
Sure.
At the end of the day, it markets our community out to the investment world. And quite honestly, you're in real estate. These developers are looking for places in several states all at the same time,
Sure.
right?
You're in competition,
You're
absolutely.
in competition, that's right, exactly. And you have to work very hard to be able to land a deal.
Yeah.
You don't get every one of them.
Yeah.
But when you do get one, it does help the economy for sure.
Absolutely. So those 8 properties, are those mostly along the 75 corridor that you guys are kind of targeting and looking at? And are they vacant land? Are they, do they have structures on them, or what's the thought there?
Well, yes and no to all of those answers.
Okay.
Some are immediately right off of I-75, but I think the initial plan was to identify any property within a mile.
Okay.
So some can be off a mile or two, I think it was. And probably the hottest spot that we'd like to see something happen is the La Pleasance Road corridor, where the old
Sure.
shopping complex was at, right? That's owned by an out-of-state developer
Mm-hmm.
that bought it and, evidently doesn't have any plans in the immediate future to do anything with it, so it there sits vacant.
Sure.
And you talk about a perfect location for warehousing or a little light assembly, because what happens is these products are shipped from different parts of the country and they travel up to the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
You can have assembly opportunities where parts can be brought into Monroe County, perhaps brought to a warehouse and assembled there for the final shipment across
Absolutely.
the bridge. So it's things like that we're thinking out of the box. And of course, that's right off the expressway.
Oh, you couldn't ask for a better location for something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sure that's going to take a different look
Mhm.
in the next 3-4 years, and it's going to be opportunities that are going to surprise us probably, that we're not even thinking about, that might end up in locations like that. There's one where the old Ritter pottery plant close to Rockwood.
Okay.
That's a location. That's got some challenges with railroad crossings and that sort of thing, and
Sure.
that's the kind of things that we're inventorying to make sure that we identify those challenges, and if we
Sure.
can help correct them. Got a lot of cooperation from the Monroe County Road Commission. Randy Pierce serves on our board.
Yeah.
And Dave Thompson from the Drain Commission. These are 2 lead players that when a project comes in.
Yeah.
those
And we're going to
two
get into the local aspect too, with the local elected officials and how they can play into economic development. First, let's take a break, and when we come back, more with Tracy Oberleiter. I'm gonna get me a little timer right there. If I'm sitting on this side, it's hard to
No.
look back at the.
No, it's
At the
okay.
clock.
No, I'll just do this.
There you go. You just waved me down.
Well, Al
So,
usually sits there, so I'm always doing this to Al. And
What do you want to do next? You want to do Generation E, or what do you got next on your list there? We talked Streamlined a little bit.
I'll tell you what, let's talk about Streamlined a little bit.
5,
And I'm going to
4,
put it
3,
in our recent
2,
planning meeting.
1.
Welcome back to Business and More. I'm your host, Greg Moore, and we're with Tracy Oberleiter today. He's filling us in with all kinds of good information on the economic development things that are going on in Monroe County, business development. We've talked about locally elected officials partnering with private entities and how we can streamline that. Speaking about streamlining, let's talk a little bit more about that, Tracy. When we left before the break, you were talking about the streamlining process and how we've set up that group of working professionals and elected officials that can help streamline the process for maybe a new business or a business that's expanding in or outside of Monroe County. So speak a little more about that streamlining process.
Sure, happy to. Just mentioned before we went on break where we had Dave Thompson and Randy Pierce representing the Road Commission and the
Sure.
Drain Commission, right? That's 2 perfect examples of streamlining opportunities, because when a developer comes in, even an existing landowner that wants to just make an improvement to the property, if it's large enough, they've got to go through both of those agencies. Well, in the old days, they used to run off to the Road Commission and get their specifications, what they need to do, and they go back and they'd have their engineer and their architect design plans, and then you go to the Drain Commission and find out that it wasn't cohesive, that they
Sure.
weren't blending together. So one of the things we did is we had that meeting happens together at the same time. The Road Commission and the Drain Commission join in with the developer and the
Sure.
township.
Mhm.
So they all get on the same page right off the bat, and it saves a lot of time.
Yeah.
Well, that streamlining concept, we're trying to incorporate across the entire county.
Sure.
Streamlining. every meeting that we go to, every presentation, we're always talking about streamlining. And if you talk about something long enough, people will get it.
People start doing it, hopefully.
And they'll start doing it, right? And one of those examples is just this last week,
Okay.
the Monroe County Board of Commissioners 4 years ago asked us to initiate some kind of training process for the zoning and planning commissions all across our county, right? Because this is where it all starts. It starts with these people to bring forward, right? And we just had our 4th zoning and planning commission meeting at downtown Monroe, at the Monroe Bank and Trust office, and I believe you were there,
Yes.
so you saw what happened. And the theme of the entire thing was planning and zoning and the streamlining and trying to make it business friendly. And it's okay if your community is all agricultural and you wanted to maintain that. There is no one twisting anyone's arm that you have to change that to something else.
Right.
We value that. But in those communities that might want to blend that together,
Sure.
might want to bring in additional revenue, because it's all about tax base and providing jobs for people to go to and rooftops that'll end up in your communities and all
Absolutely.
those sorts of things, right? So that's the concept behind it. And so it was well received. And one of the questions that came out of that was pretty amazing. And I thought, that's a good question because maybe that's what other people think. From the audience, it came, who is in charge? Remember this question, Greg? Who's in charge of making sure all this happens? What person in Monroe County does all this?
Right.
And I thought about that, and there isn't one person. There isn't one agency. It's a cooperative effort between a lot of different organizations going on. And,
Yeah.
you know, the Business Development Corporation, Tim Lake's group, you know, they're professional people on the street. They visit businesses every day about retention and
Sure.
what they can do. Because it's just as important to keep our businesses here
Sure, we don't want
and
to go
have
somewhere
jobs
else. Yeah.
because, you know, they get stressed, they get challenges.
Sure.
And so the business development does a very good job of maintaining a relationship with them to help them along the way. And of course, another part of what they do is acquisition. So they're out there trying to market that. So it's a team effort.
Sure.
And just before, I just want to mention is it's so important, and some of the townships are starting to value that, and I think Bedford Township is one of them. In the
Yes.
last year,
Absolutely.
they created an economic development group within themselves.
Because of what you guys were doing at the county level with the planning. That was one of the reasons. Dundee's another one of those. In the last 4 years, we've seen that type of group that you're talking about, the planning and zoning seminar at I wouldn't say it's just county. It's obviously there's townships and cities and villages involved. But because you're leading by example there, you see some of the other municipalities going, well, hey, we want in on this. That's a great idea. I've always been a firm believer. Leading by example is probably one of the best ways to lead a team. You can talk to people, you can have personality traits, you can do the tests, you can have certain management styles, but ultimately if you lead by example, you end up, and you see results, people just come on board. So the fact that we have municipalities now going, hey, we want to hold our own planning and zoning seminar kind of for our township or our village or our city, and then we have a larger planning and zoning seminar like we had just a few days ago where last year I think they clocked out at 120 people. This one we're close to 100 people. I mean, there's a lot of people that come to this and want to know what's going on in the communities that they live in and how this can be streamlined and who do I communicate with if I have issues or questions. I just think it's so needed. And sometimes it's not, especially when you're talking to maybe the younger generation or the entrepreneurial generation, they get an idea of what it means to own a business, right?
Oh,
It
yeah.
looks like it's all fun and games. I set my own schedule. I'm jet setting. I'm doing this. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of maybe red tape. And anytime you can have other business owners, elected officials, community leaders get together and go, how can we lessen that burden for the business owner or community influencer so they have more time to create wealth for other people and put creativity into their products and things like that. It's always a good thing, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, and time is money. It all boils down.
Sure.
If the developer could get in the ground in a reasonable length of time, and you know, we can't do anything that's illegal as far as timelines with the state and the federal government
Sure.
and that sort of thing. Mostly the state and the county, but there's a lot of processes that can happen to make things happen faster. And when you get a dirt moving faster on a project, you get people working quicker on the job, and it's a financial investment. Let's face it, companies come here because they want to make money.
Sure.
Bottom line. You know, they don't come here because they just want to be kind to the community. They want to make money for themselves and their stockholders and their investors and that sort of thing. So the quicker you can respond to their needs, get them in the ground, get them going,
Sure.
and do everything in a legal way and be cooperative. It's the cooperative nature. We went out to every municipality, and we've got every municipality has signed a mutual agreement of spirit of cooperation.
I like that.
It was in the county. We've got your board of commissioners to sign that, Greg. And
Okay.
that was before you were there.
Okay.
But there was no big discussion about that. They said absolutely.
Right.
But we thought, to get everybody on the same page, we better be on the same page and understand what our expectations are.
Sure.
And that was a big undertaking. But it was one of the things that we were just so proud of that we got very...
And you're talking about streamlining. That's something we're looking at even on the board right now as our county planning commission. There's been talks over the last year, and I did do a video on this, and a couple thousand people viewed it and gave their input. But right now, if you want to do a rezone, or some majority of planning issues are rezoning for our purposes at the county, you go to your local planning commission. It then comes to the county, and then goes back to the board, the township board or the village council, whoever it's going to. And right now, the county planning commission has absolutely no statutory authority to make any changes. All we can do is make a recommendation. So we would say, well, according to our master plan, the Monroe County master plan, yes or no. And once it goes back to the board, if that township board or that local municipality has the votes and wants to rezone or change whatever, they have the ultimate authority to do so as they're autonomous. So we're seeing this redundancy where we're holding up a rezone process by almost 30 days just so it can come up to us. We make a recommendation, and here's the issue. In the 70s, 80s, and 90s, planning commissions were very needed. Most of your townships didn't have planning commissions or a master plan or all these things. There's only one community in Monroe County that doesn't have their own master plan and doesn't have their own full-time planners. And you talk about like Spicer and Maddox Smith, they're working for the local municipalities. So we look at it as a board of commissioners and go, well, is that something that there's a redundancy there where we could just eliminate the commission, now not eliminate the planning department, those are two different things,
Right.
but the 7 to 11 people who vote on something who has no statutory authority to vote on, if we eliminated that and made it from a 78 to 90 day process down to a 30 to 45 day process, is that something where we could streamline local government, still give the public the right to go to the their local board to voice their concerns if they have any, so we're not taking anything away there, but do it in a way to where, new business, heck, even a small business owner that wants to run a business out of his house and needs a rezone or has a planning issue can get through it a little bit quicker, a little more streamlined without maybe that extra step getting in the way. That could be a decision that can make or break a decision for a new business that wants to come to Monroe County.
Oh, absolutely could. And I've seen it happen several times where a recommendation comes back out of the county.
Sure.
And it gets denied or changed significantly back at the local level. So you're spot on. That's an example, perfect example of streamlining.
Sure.
Time is money.
Yeah.
So that's important.
Well, I can't let you go as we go into our final quarter here without talking about Ducks Unlimited because I believe that business and community outreach go hand in hand. I look at organizations like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when I look at organizations like Ducks Unlimited, I see a big theme of conservation. People go, are you a hunter? I say, well, I'm a conservationalist first, and yes, I'm also a hunter because 99.9% of hunters are also conservationists. They want to treat what we've been given correctly, leave it better than how they left it, provide for the animals, for the plants, for everything that's included in nature. So when I look at Ducks Unlimited, not only do I look at, obviously, a sport and a pastime, but I look at it as almost as an outreach arm as well, too, because, I live in my community, I own a business, I have a family here. I want to take care of my community. That means taking care of people, also taking care of the land and the nature that we've been given. So when we come back from the break, I'm going to tease a little bit. He's going to tell us about being involved with Ducks Unlimited. So take a break and then back with more with Tracy.
Good. And then we can cover entrepreneurship along with the ducks.
Okay. Yeah, just you figure out however you want to interject it and I'll follow.
Okay. Okay.
Zooming along.
Hey, you get a couple talkers, it goes fast.
Oh, I'm never bored. I'm never bored with any of our Saturday shows. I mean, it's really way cool.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, and this was Becky Clark. She's married to
15
Dennis
seconds.
Clark
Mhm.
from Coldwell Banker, and this was her idea. Let's do Saturday shows.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, welcome back to Business and More with Greg Moore. We have Tracy Oberleiter in studio today. We're talking all kinds of fun stuff, entrepreneurship, excellence in business, economic development, and I teased a little bit before the break that Tracy is involved with an organization called Ducks Unlimited. And when I say involved, that's probably an understatement. I attend one of the largest gatherings, fundraisers, I guess you could call it, in Monroe County. I think we had over 1,000, over 1,200 people maybe at the last. It's one of the largest in the state, I think, or
It is the largest in
is
the
it?
state.
Okay, I didn't want to misstate,
30th,
but
30th largest in the country.
and Tracy would never tell you this, but he's probably the linchpin of the whole thing. I'm sure you have a lot of good people around you that help make it happen, but he's kind of, like I said, the point of getting all that done. So talk a little bit about your involvement in Ducks Unlimited, how that relates to business, how it relates to conservation, how it relates to giving back to the community.
You know, it's like weaving it all together.
Sure.
And they all play an important part. And just first of all, I want to go back to 1937 in the Dust Bowl days out in the Dakotas. That's how it all started. Ducks Unlimited started with a group of duck hunters back in the day. The ducks were disappearing because the water was disappearing. And they were smart enough to know that they had to do something to change the environment to bring these breeding opportunities back to the ducks. So from there it started in America.
Okay.
And then over the years expanded to Canada and to Mexico because these are all the flyways. So that's kind of how it started. And many people think of Ducks Unlimited as a bunch of duck hunters that just want to go out and they shoot ducks and they eat ducks at Ducks Unlimited dinners.
Right.
Couldn't be any furthest from the truth.
I know.
We had 1,100 people come to our banquet. And out of the 1,100 people, there's probably 75 that are volunteers. Now they're also participating in all the different activities.
Sure.
And we had a little over 1,000 people that paid to come to this, right? And out of the 1,000 people that paid to come to it, 900 were represented from businesses.
Wow.
A business would buy a table of 10. And they would take that opportunity to entertain their clients, maybe just their own staff. But once they arrived, they had to do nothing because the Ducks Unlimited committee did everything for them.
Okay.
Gave them good food, gave them some refreshments, gave them the opportunity to win prizes, buy things at a live auction, entertain them for the night. We gave a lot of recognition back to the businesses and all that sort of thing. The people in that room are probably 10% might even in some remote way once in a while duck hunt, but 90% are conservationists. The point that you were trying to make.
Yeah.
Trying to give back to the community something that that certainly needs to have attention done to.
Sure.
And we all enjoy a clean glass of water, right?
Sure.
And one of the byproducts of what Ducks Unlimited does is they create wetlands for all the creatures that enjoy wetlands. Not only ducks and geese, but deer and every fish, all of that, right? When they create a wetland, the wetland acts as a sponge. When the water runs off the rivers and from the land, it goes into a wetland, it acts as a sponge, it holds the floodwaters back, filters the water out, and eventually gets into the lakes. Not just Lake Erie, but all the lakes around the world. So, so it creates a water filtering system too. Now that has always been the case, but now with the algae problems on Lake Erie and that sort of thing, it's brought more of attention. So ducks plays a big part of that. And companies, I found in my work of what I do for the bank, is companies want to invest in their communities too. So quite often we get into conversations about what makes sense. And believe me, Ducks Unlimited is not the only organization. There's a lot of great ones out there. There's Pheasants Forever, there's a lot of conservation, there's Waterfowl USA, a lot of good conservation officers, and a lot of other good programs. And the bank supports pretty much all of them.
Sure.
It's just that I happen to focus on Ducks Unlimited. So I'm proud to be part of that. And there's 25 people on our committee, Greg. So
Wow.
it's just not me.
Yeah.
You know, sure, I play probably a good part of that, but there's 25 people that go to work and make this organization
Sure.
what it is, right?
Yeah.
And
I've seen a real shift, and maybe you can speak to this too, because you've been in business a little longer than I have. But I feel even from 30 years ago, there's been a shift from businesses. You know, businesses are always profit motivated. I mean, that's how they create wealth for other people, create jobs, create wealth for themselves. So I don't look at the P word as a bad thing. I want everyone to make profit. But I feel like even from 30 years ago, there was a focus on, you know, environmental issues and community issues were kind of secondary. Let's get in there, let's make our money, let's get out if we have to, you know, kind of run the course. And I've seen over, especially the last 10 or 15 years, just this huge shift in corporations, LLCs, small businesses going, there's real value in actually taking care of the community that you're in, taking care of the environment that's around you. Not just value in it's good PR, but there's also profitability there as well too, because people sometimes choose who they patronize based on your environmental or conservation or community outlook. You know, so we're seeing the shift to where they go, oh, it's always been an important piece, we just really didn't focus on it. You know, you can attribute a lot to it, to even maybe in the mid-2000s with the tech industry, your Googles and your Facebooks, and they said, well, we're going to change the way we kind of treat employees or do business, and then with that, put a focus on conservation, environment, and things like that. So I've kind of seen this shift, and I look at like Ducks Unlimited and some of the other organizations you look at as just another philanthropic, did I say that word right?
Very
Philanthropic? Did I look how well I'm doing? Philanthropic arm of business. You know, sometimes, especially when I'm talking to young business owners, they don't really see the value of the giving aspect, the giving back aspect of it. And I don't know of a long-term, well-rounded, established company that's lasted that doesn't also give back to the community that they're part of. I just don't see it. They either move, they go out of business, they don't do well, and I don't know how to explain that. It's like this weird, mysterious thing, you know. I've mentioned before, I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was just really eye-opening to me in my early 20s. And the guy said, you know, the more money I give away as a business owner, the more I just seem to make. And it's this weird thing to where giving is part of also getting. You know what I mean? It's this yin-yang type thing. So it's good to see business leaders like you involved in groups like that. And I know that's not the only one.
Well, it's part of the culture.
Culture,
Talk
there you go,
about
that's a good
it's
word
a
for it.
culture that's ingrained in companies.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, in the past years, maybe they didn't get enough recognition for that.
Okay.
We try to change that. We try to recognize those that give, especially to the Ducks Unlimited organization.
Sure.
In fact, I was state chairman for Major Donor Giving, which is a big league donor.
Sure.
Donates $10,000 and 20,
Yeah.
and you know, I've had donors all the way up to $2 million
Wow.
out of this community.
Wow.
That's given to Ducks Unlimited. So
Wow.
it's a great organization, but it's all about culture. And when an employee works for a company,
Yeah.
and they know what the company's culture is about, that they give back and support in programs like this, or
Sure.
organizations, makes them feel better about going to work, right?
Yeah.
Because you know it's just not all about the money. It's
Yeah.
just not all about the money.
So we have a few minutes left here in the hour. Was there anything else on your mind that you wanted to talk about, or something we haven't covered that would be advantageous to the program?
Yes, Greg, there certainly is. And it's all about entrepreneurship.
Yes.
That's been a focus and a high priority of the Economic Development Corporation Board going back 5 or 6 years. We established a subcommittee of our board and went out and recruited additional volunteers, professional people in the community, to see if we could cultivate something better for entrepreneurship in the county. Because, you know, entrepreneurship goes back to the Monroe Shock Absorber, the Lazy Boy. These
Sure.
are all companies that started through entrepreneurship. one of the things that I'm really proud of is we came across in our research a program called Generation E. And it was out of Grand Rapids, and it was a not-for-profit organization. And essentially they had a curriculum for students from the 3rd grade all the way through high school, graduation, a curriculum of developing entrepreneurship, motivation, skills, education about a business operation, starting as early as, let's see, a 3rd grader is 8 years old.
Wow.
Something like that, 8, 9 years old, right? So very young. And it's actually, if an organization bought into the program, like a public school system, it became part of their curriculum. It wasn't an elective, right? So we introduced that concept to Monroe Public Schools, all right? Julie Everly is the superintendent of schools. We introduced that about a year ago, year and a half ago. It takes a little while to get it through the system, but they felt so strongly about it, they picked up the program, and they provided training for 50 educators, 50 teachers, and brought it into the school system. It's now up and running, and essentially, last year they had their first expo where these kids would invent a product or create a business, doesn't have to be an invention, and take it to the marketplace. 8, 9, 10-year-old kids, all the way up to, 16, 17-year-old kids. And these are all entrepreneurship. Well, now, when our public schools had such good success with it, they bought the rights to, and they're taking over Generation E program from the organization in Grand Rapids, and it's going to be housed right here in our community.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, there's an open house educational piece on it coming up on Wednesday at Monroe Bank and Trust on the 4th floor that the community can certainly come to learn more about it. But just think of the possibilities that this is one of those things that, it might be 5 or 10 years from now. But it's certainly going to happen where these kids come out and they graduate and they've got that spirit about invention and entrepreneurship. And at very least, Greg, if these kids don't invent something, and not everybody will, we know that, they're going to come and they're going to graduate and they're going to be a lot better person for business because they're going to understand the business world a lot better.
Well, that's what was so exciting about this. When I saw this presentation, we were involved in some of the young kids that either invented something or ran a business. It's kind of it's a program that really covers soup to nuts, as they say, the kind of the experience of either entrepreneurship or owning a business. I told Julie, had I had this program when I was in high school, it would have answered a lot of questions for my parents. Why is he not paying attention? Why is he always asking questions in class? There's certain personalities and certain types of people that, maybe a 4-year college and getting a degree isn't really in their future. And it's, I'm curious. I'm asking questions. I want to invent things. I want to run a business. I want to do all these things. And it was so cool to see. I think the gentleman I talked to was in 9th grade at the time, freshman in high school. He just went, oh, my eyes just got open to all these things that are included in this thing that I was already interested in. And you just go, wow, what a well-rounded student he's going to be, even if he doesn't desire to do that. Who knows? When you're 13, 14, 15, you might not be doing the same thing when you're 25, 26, 30. So, but the life experiences and kind of, like you said, the education he gets in that aspect of what it takes to either run a business or invent something or entrepreneurship, wow, how well-rounded he's going to be when he hits 18 in time for college, right? And
he graduates, comes out into the workforce. He understands about marketing, the cost of running a business, and all that sorts of things. And the thing that I think, you can have very bright kids in school. They're almost so bright they become bored because their curriculum isn't challenging. Where they find a process like this that they can get involved with creating their own product and being their own business person, right? That can keep them in school.
And I've seen too now, we have some these expos, you'll see job creators and business owners show up to these, kind of scouting these inventions and these kids and going, I mean, the labor market is almost, I heard Tim Lake talk about, it's almost kind of like a basketball team. I mean, they're going down to the 8th, 9th grade deep into these schools, junior highs and high schools, and going, okay, this is the next generation of workers and entrepreneurs and inventors, and we want to see what they have going on because we're going to be hiring these guys pretty soon. I know a 9th grader or a 10th or junior or senior might not be thinking too much about long-term careers, but I'll tell you what, these people that own businesses, they're definitely thinking about it because they need to replace that labor force with the next generation.
They're looking for talent, and it's all happening right here. It all happened because a group of us got together and wanted to do something more for entrepreneurs.
Well, Tracy, the hour just flew by. Before I let you go, is there any contact information or anything you'd want to throw out to people listening or watching if they had any interest in business development or anything in your profession that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Anything we talked about, just call Tracy Oberleiter at Monroe Bank and Trust. Pretty much everybody knows me there by now.
Okay.
Right? So they'll get you in contact with me, and I've got a lot more to talk about. Greg, I want to come back on the show.
Absolutely.
Because I'll tell you what, things change so much between a month and 2.
Yeah.
Have me back, please.
Well, we'd love to have you back. So much great information. Everyone, thanks for listening. Greg Moore with Business and More. Have a great week. Good?
You're all
All
good?
right, thanks, guys.
That was quick.
Great job.
Goes by pretty fast, doesn't it?
Well, you get